One of the most controversial issues of last year was the presidential election. Marked by previously unheard of campaign tactics and involving possible interference by another country, the election of 2016 presented a divided America and caused many to rethink their values and reevaluate their faith in the American electoral system. In the midst of such a tumultuous time, it can be helpful to look at some of the many controversial elections of the past and examine the changes they spurred. The aftermath of the controversial elections of 1800, 1876, and 2000 suggests that similar changes may result from the unprecedented 2016 election. In 1800, the young nation of America was composed of a 90% rural population, with the largest city population in Philadelphia. Still neighbored by British and French territories, the U.S. was still revising and settling into the Constitution as the fourth American presidential election began. The tickets in the 1800 election were composed of Democratic-Republican candidates Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr, and Federalists John Adams and Charles C. Pinckney. The Democratic Republicans ran with the goals to minimize the centralization of federal power, limit expansion of the U.S. military, and end the Alien Sedition Acts, and the Federalists ran to increase federal authority and funding in these same areas. The country was strongly divided on these issues, and each side thought that the changes of the other would be catastrophic for the country. This election was also unique as it marked the first time candidates campaigned, and the personal attacks that candidates used through the whole election were previously unseen and highly controversial. As the final ballots for the Electoral College were counted in February of 1801, it was discovered that something unprecedented had happened. There had been a tie in electoral votes between two men from the same ticket. Jefferson and Burr both received 73 electoral votes. Adams received 65 and Pinckney received 64, while John Jay, who was not even running, received 1 vote. Because the Constitution did not distinguish between votes for president and vice president, the tie would be decided in the House of Representatives, and running mates Jefferson and Burr became rivals for the presidency. After several days, the tie was broken with Jefferson as president. The aftermath of the election of 1800 is particularly notable, since the unexpected tie prompted the passage of the 12th Amendment. This amendment stated that ballots must explicitly name a president and vice president, which changed the fundamental functionality of the electoral process permanently. In addition to causing revisions to central laws, the election of 1800 also marked the beginning of the demise of the Federalist Party, a significant turning point in American politics. The election of 1876 took place barely a decade after the end of the Civil War, and in the past several elections, Republicans had a stronghold on the presidency as the South recovered. In 1876, however, Republicans had been weakened by corruption and scandals, and Democrats began to reclaim some federal power, making the election competitive. Republicans selected Rutherford B. Hayes as presidential candidate and William A. Wheeler as his running mate, while Democrats chose Samuel J. Tilden and Thomas A. Hendricks. As with the election of 1800, the election of 1876 occurred in a very divided nation, with both sides intolerant of the ideas of the other side. Republicans sought to end Reconstruction and continue fighting for civil rights, while Democrats called for reform of the federal government and restrictions on Chinese immigration to the U.S. On Election Day, Tilden seemed to be a sure win, leading by 260,000 popular votes and nearly an electoral majority. However, 3 states were claimed by both sides, leading to a dispute that lasted into December. In December, however, electoral reports were still in disagreement, and in the weeks that followed, there was fear that another civil war might break out as a result of the election. Congress was forced to create an electoral commission to resolve the conflict of the election, but during the commission's deliberations, Republicans and Democrats negotiated terms to ensure a peaceful transfer of power. Hayes' eventual win caused outrage in some Northern Democrats, but the South was relatively pleased as Hayes followed through on his pledge to withdraw federal troops from southern states. The aftermath of the controversial election of 1876 was another massive turning point in U.S. history. The controversy-fueled pledge to end Reconstruction marked a movement away from the post-Civil War culture of past years and toward a more self-sufficient and solid South. The controversial election of 2000 marks the most recent historical similarity to the election of 2016. In 2000, the economy was flourishing, crime was down, and the U.S. was undoubtedly a global leader. Bill Clinton's successful presidency was coming to a close, and both Democrats and Republicans sought to find suitable successors. Democrats decided on former Vice President Al Gore for president and Joseph Lieberman as his running mate, while Republicans chose George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. Though a tight race was expected, nobody was prepared for the inexplicable events of election night. It quickly became clear that the election hinged on Florida, and by 3 a.m., Bush led by a thin margin in the Electoral College. As election night came and went, there was no clear winner, as many news sources presented contradictory information. Gore called Bush to concede the election, but he withdrew this concession at around 3 a.m. after the Florida race appeared to become much closer. Disputes arose over the use of some Florida ballots, which could read inaccurately due to an improperly punched card. Gore requested a recount in Florida as a result of this information, which gave Bush a narrow lead of a mere 327 votes. Florida continued to be disputed until around midnight of the following night, when Bush's lead in Florida inexplicably grew enormously, winning him the presidency. However, controversy remained since Gore won the popular vote by 500,000 votes, the first inversion of the Electoral College and popular vote since 1888. The immediate aftermath of this controversial election was a revision of the election process, namely the large-scale replacement of paper votes with electronic voting machines. However, the effects of the election on the country in the months and years that followed were a more pessimistic attitude and an economic decline that eventually turned near catastrophic. 6 years after the unexpected controversy that was the election of 2000, an election unlike any other was taking shape. With a massive assortment of possible Republican nominees and only 2 likely Democratic candidates, the nomination and election looked relatively likely to go to Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State and First Lady. This was made even more plausible when the Republicans chose to nominate Donald Trump, a businessman with no political experience. The election took place, as in 1800 and 1876, in a country that was proven to be more divided than previously known, with both sides passionately and sometimes violently against the other. The types of actions and demeanors of the candidates while campaigning were previously unseen in politics and often controversial, and this only led to more division between parties. Scandals weakened both sides, and the media played a massive role in crafting both the Democratic and Republican candidates, with Trump's controversial actions granting him plentiful free press. One of the most controversial aspects of the election was the choice of the FBI to investigate Hillary Clinton's emails, damaging her appearance to voters and only clearing her of criminal wrongdoing 2 days before the election. On election night, shocked citizens that expected a landslide Clinton victory were quickly forced to accept a Trump presidency as the electoral count decisively went to Trump, 306 to 232. The popular vote, however, went to Clinton by a margin of over 2.8 million, the largest margin of any losing candidate. Similarly to the election of 2000, confusion and outrage arose over the popular win but electoral loss. Donald Trump assumed the presidency to nationwide protests in a country more divided than ever. The controversial election of 2016 bears similarity to many others, from the new approaches to campaigning from 1800 to the intolerance of both parties to each other's ideas to the inverted popular and electoral votes. Scandals have weakened sure wins in past elections and continued to do so in 2016. Most notably, the controversy surrounding each of these elections caused deep reflection in both the government and citizens, and though it is too early to fully tell the long-term effects of the 2016 election, it has caused many to reconsider their faith in the Electoral College and re-examine what it means to be part of a democracy.